You, the Architect. How to Create Your Reality. By Michael Machette Van Helsing. Table of Contents. Introduction: The Convergence of Ancient Wisdom and Modern Science. Part I: The Ancient Whisper, Principles of the Ancients. Chapter 1: The Hermetic Foundation, Thoth, the Emerald Tablet, and the Principle of Correspondence. Chapter 2: Global Manifestations of Correspondence, a Comparative Analysis of Sacred Texts. Chapter 3: The Interior Dimension, Psychological and Spiritual Formulations of Inner-Outer Causality. Chapter 4: Historical Guardianship, the Role of Esoteric Societies in Preserving Perennial Philosophy. Part II: The Modern Echo, Scientific Correlates to Ancient Principles. Chapter 5: Fractal Geometry and Systems Theory, Mathematical Validation of Self-Similarity in Nature. Chapter 6: Quantum Mechanics and Consciousness, Observer Effects, Entanglement, and Non-Locality. Chapter 7: Neuroplasticity and Psychoneuroimmunology, the Biochemical Substrate of Mind-Body Interaction. Chapter 8: From Unified Field Theory to Informational Cosmology, Physics Approaches the Primacy of Consciousness. Part III: The Synthesis, an Integrated Model of Reality. Chapter 9: The Tripartite Framework, Correspondence, Consciousness, and Causation as Unified Principles. Chapter 10: Philosophical Implications, Deconstructing Conventional Notions of Time, Space, and Individuality. Part IV: The Practical Manual, Methodologies for Applied Hermeticism *. Chapter 11: Foundational Practices, Cultivating Self-Observation and Cognitive Discipline. Chapter 12: Technique I, Meditative Focus and Mental Clarification Protocols. Chapter 13: Technique II, Somatic and Emotional Alchemical Processes. Chapter 14: Technique III, Symbolic Imprinting and Directed Visualization Methodologies. Chapter 15: Technique IV, Principles of Aligned Action and Wu Wei in Contemporary Contexts. Chapter 16: Integration Protocols, Designing Sustainable Personal Practice Systems. Chapter 17: Addressing Resistance, Psychological and Energetic Barriers to Transformation. Closing Matter. Chapter 18: Towards an Integrated Existence, The Confluence of Success and Enlightenment. Bonus Chapter: The Third Pillar, The Alchemy of Radical Responsibility. Secret Chapter: The Secret Technique. Appendix: Annotated Bibliographic Resources and Research Directives. Comprehensive Bibliography. Index. Introduction: The Convergence of Ancient Wisdom and Modern Science. This volume presents a systematic examination of a profound and recurring insight that permeates the world's philosophical, spiritual, and esoteric traditions, that a fundamental correspondence exists between the macrocosm and the microcosm, and that the interior landscape of consciousness exerts a formative influence on external reality. Historically articulated as above, so below, and as within, so without, these principles have been cornerstones of Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Kabbalah, alchemy, and numerous Eastern philosophies. For centuries, these concepts resided primarily within the domain of metaphysics and subjective experience, often guarded by initiatory schools due to their potent implications and potential for misuse. Their transmission required not merely intellectual comprehension, but ethical preparation and experiential verification. This historical sequestration has often led modern academia to dismiss them as pre-scientific or mystical speculation. However, the late 20th and early 21st centuries have witnessed a remarkable development. Independent frontiers of scientific inquiry, including quantum mechanics, fractal mathematics, neuroscience, and systems theory, have begun to produce models and data that resonate strikingly with these ancient axioms. The universe described by contemporary physics is non-local, observer-influenced, and holographic in its information structure. Biology reveals a brain and body exquisitely plastic, molded by experience and thought. Mathematics finds self-similar patterns, scaling from the microscopic to the cosmic. This book argues that we are witnessing a significant convergence. The ancient intuitive and experiential maps of reality are finding correlates in the empirical and theoretical maps of modern science. This is not to suggest that science proves spirituality, but rather that a robust dialogue is now possible, where each domain can inform and refine the other. The structure of this work is threefold. First, it establishes the historical and philosophical lineage of the principles of correspondence and inner-outer causality, demonstrating their pervasive and sophisticated cross-cultural expression. Second, it meticulously surveys contemporary scientific research that provides compelling parallels and potential mechanisms for these principles. Third, and crucially, it translates this synthesis into a coherent and practical framework, an inner technology, that individuals can systematically apply for personal development, enhanced efficacy, and profound self-understanding. This is offered not as dogma, but as an interdisciplinary hypothesis and a manual for experimentation. The reader is invited to engage with the material critically, to test the protocols, and to observe the results within the laboratory of their own life. Part I: The Ancient Whisper, Principles of the Ancients. Chapter 1: The Hermetic Foundation, Thoth, the Emerald Tablet, and the Principle of Correspondence. The conceptual anchor for this investigation is found in the Western esoteric tradition, specifically within the body of writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. This syncretic figure, a fusion of the Egyptian deity Thoth and the Greek Hermes, represents the archetype of the divine scribe and master of hidden laws. Thoth, as god of wisdom, writing, and measurement, embodies the principle that reality is structured according to intelligible, cosmic principles that can be known. The most concise and influential expression of this Hermetic philosophy is the tabula smaragdina, or emerald tablet. Its central axiom, quod est superius est sicut quod inferius, et quod inferius est sicut quod est superius, that which is above is like to that which is below, and that which is below is like to that which is above, establishes the principle of correspondence as the foundational law of a coherent cosmos. This statement is not a vague metaphor, but a precise ontological claim. It posits a universe constructed holographically, where patterns repeat across scales of magnitude. The movement of planets, above, follows harmonic ratios analogous to musical intervals, below. The structure of a kingdom reflects the structure of a well-ordered soul. The growth of a plant mirrors the process of spiritual gestation. In Hermetic thought, to study any natural phenomenon deeply is to gain insight into all other levels of reality. For all are woven from the same archetypal blueprints. The 7 Hermetic principles derived from this core: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender, form an interlocking system for understanding cosmic operations. Mentalism, the all is mind, establishes consciousness as the fundamental substance. Correspondence provides the structural relationship between its manifestations. The remaining principles describe the dynamic processes by which this mental substance manifests into the polarized, rhythmic phenomena of the experienced world. Chapter 2: Global Manifestations of Correspondence, a comparative analysis of sacred texts. The Hermetic articulation is but one particularly systematic voice in a global chorus of wisdom traditions that have articulated the principle of macrocosm-microcosm correspondence. This chapter undertakes a detailed comparative analysis, demonstrating that this is a cross-cultural, perennial insight, not a cultural idiosyncrasy. Hinduism and Vedanta, the foundational equation Tat Tvamasi, Chandogya Upanishad 687, asserts the non-dual identity of the individual self, Atman, with ultimate reality, Brahman. The entire universe is seen as a projection or manifestation of Brahman, making every individual entity a microcosmic point containing the whole. Practical systems like yoga and tantra operationalize this through the subtle body map of chakras and nadis, which correlate specific psycho-spiritual states with cosmic principles and energies. Buddhism, Mahayana, the Avatamsaka Sutra presents the metaphor of Indra's net, an infinite lattice where each node holds a jewel reflecting every other jewel. This perfectly illustrates a universe of total interdependence and mutual reflection, where any single phenomenon contains the pattern of the entirety. The doctrine of pratityasamutpada, dependent origination, further establishes that no being or thing exists independently. All arise in a vast web of causal conditions. Taoism, the Tao Te Ching presents the ineffable Tao as the source and pattern of the 10,000 things. Alignment with this pattern, T, is the source of natural power and wisdom. The system of yin-yang and the 5 phases, Wu-Xing, is a comprehensive correspondence framework linking seasons, directions, emotions, organs, colors, and sounds into a dynamic, cyclical model of transformation, applied in medicine, martial arts, and statecraft. Kabbalah, Judaism, The Sephirot on the Tree of Life are simultaneously attributes of the divine, stages of cosmic emanation, and aspects of the human soul and body. The concept of Adam Kadmon, primordial man, is the archetypal blueprint linking the divine, cosmic, and human realms. Kabbalistic practice involves ascending through these correspondences to achieve unification, Yichudum. Sufism, Islam, the doctrine of the Al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect human, articulates the human being as the microcosm that comprehensively reflects all divine names and attributes, serving as the isthmus barzak between creator and creation. The universe is often seen as the outward manifestation of God's hidden treasure, known through the polished mirror of the perfected human heart. This comparative analysis will extend to include Platonic and Neoplatonic forms, Pythagorean harmonics, and indigenous animist cosmologies, where the natural and spiritual worlds interpenetrate. The conclusion is robust. The perception of a coherent, patterned, and reflective universe is a near-universal feature of humanity's deepest philosophical and spiritual inquiries. Chapter 3: The Interior Dimension: Psychological and Spiritual Formulations of Inner-Outer Causality. While correspondence describes the structure of reality, the companion principle, here termed inner-outer causality, describes its dynamic mechanism, the formative power of consciousness, intention, and inner state in shaping lived experience. The primacy of heart and mind. In the Hebrew Bible, the heart, lev, is the seat of thought, will, and moral character. Proverbs 4:23 warns, "Guard your heart diligently, for from it flow the springs of life." This establishes the inner world as the source of outer consequence. In the New Testament, Jesus internalizes moral law, stating that anger equates to murder and lust to adultery, Matthew 5:21-30, making intention the criterion for ethical judgment. Buddhist psychology, the Dhammapada begins, "Mind is the forerunner of all things. Speak or act with a corrupted mind and suffering follows. Speak or act with a peaceful mind and happiness follows." The entire cycle of samsara is driven and perpetuated by mental formations, sankharas, habitual patterns of craving and aversion rooted in ignorance. Stoic philosophy. Stoicism builds an entire ethic on the distinction between external events, adiaphora, and our internal judgments, hypolepsis, about them. As Epictetus states in the Enchiridion, it is not things that disturb people, but their judgments about things. Freedom, eudaimonia, is achieved by mastering these internal judgments, thereby rendering the self invulnerable to external circumstance. Karma and intention. In Hindu and Buddhist thought, the law of karma is inextricably linked to intention, cetana. It is the volition behind an action, not merely the action itself, that plants the karmic seed which will fructify in future conditions. Thus, the purification of motive becomes the central ethical and practical task. Alchemical transmutation. In Western alchemy, the outer laboratory work was an allegory for the inner, great work, opus magnum. The transmutation of base lead into gold symbolized the purification of the soul from base passions into spiritual gold. The famous maxim, visita interiora terrae rectificando in venis occultum lapidum, visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying you will find the hidden stone, explicitly directs the operation inward. This chapter will analyze these diverse formulations, arguing that they collectively posit a model where consciousness is not a passive epiphenomenon, but an active, causal agency. The outer world of circumstances, relationships, and health is understood as a reflection or crystallization of the inner world of belief, emotional habit, and perceptual focus. Mastery of life, therefore, logically begins with the mastery of one's own interiority. Chapter 4: Historical Guardianship: The Role of Esoteric Societies in Preserving Perennial Philosophy. The widespread yet profound nature of the principles of correspondence and inner-outer causality necessitated specialized modes of transmission. This chapter provides a historical and sociological analysis of the secret societies, mystery schools, and initiatory orders that served as their primary custodians for millennia. The rationale for secrecy. The sequestration of this knowledge was driven by three primary imperatives, often intersecting. 1. Protection from persecution. Doctrines of inner divinity, direct gnosis, and the malleability of reality were frequently deemed heretical by orthodox religious institutions and threatening to political authorities. The history of Gnostic persecution, the suppression of the Cathars, and the trials of figures like Giordano Bruno attest to this danger. Secrecy ensured the survival of both the teachings and their adherents. 2. Pedagogical and ethical filtering. This knowledge confers what can be understood as operational power. Transmitted without corresponding ethical and psychological development, it risks becoming an instrument of manipulation, black magic, or psychic tyranny. Orders like the Pythagoreans, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons implemented graded initiation systems. Preliminary degrees focused on moral development, symbolic literacy, and the cultivation of character, testing the aspirant's worthiness before introducing practical techniques of consciousness and energy manipulation. 3. Preservation of experiential efficacy. The core of this teaching is not intellectual information, but transformative experience. Mystery schools like those at Eleusis used ritual, drama, and sensory deprivation to induce direct states of gnosis or union. The secrecy surrounding the aporeta, the unspeakable things, protected the potency of these experiences from being diluted by casual discourse or premature intellectualization. The oath of silence was often less about hiding facts and more about honoring the sanctity of a transformative process that words could only point toward. A survey of custodial lineages, this section will detail key historical vessels. Ancient mysteries. The Egyptian initiations, the Eleusinian and Orphic mysteries of Greece. Medieval and Renaissance orders. The Knights Templar and their secret esoteric knowledge, the Kabbalistic circles of Safed, the Christian Hermeticists of the Renaissance, e.g. Ficino, Pico della Mirandola, and the emergence of Rosicrucianism. Modern esotericisms. The founding of speculative Freemasonry, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and Theosophical Society, each adapting perennial principles to new cultural contexts. This argues that these societies functioned as the R&D departments of human consciousness, preserving, experimenting with, and refining psychospiritual technologies. Their gradual opening of teachings in the modern era coincides with a cultural shift toward individualism and a democratization of knowledge, transferring the responsibility for ethical application from the institution to the individual practitioner. Part II, the modern echo, scientific equivalents and connections to ancient principles. Chapter 5, Fractal Geometry and Systems Theory, Mathematical Validation of Self-Similarity in Nature. The ancient principle of correspondence finds a striking and precise analogue in the modern mathematical discovery of fractal geometry. This chapter provides a detailed exploration of how fractals operationalize the concept of as above, so below, as a describable, measurable feature of the natural world. Defining the fractal. Coined by Benoit Mandelbrot, a fractal is a geometric shape that exhibits self-similarity across scales. This means that as one zooms in on a portion of the object, its statistical or visual pattern remains similar to the whole. This is not merely approximate. In mathematical fractals like the Mandelbrot set, the complexity is infinite and exactly recursive. Ubiquitous natural fractals. The power of fractal geometry lies in its descriptive potency for irregular natural forms that Euclidean geometry could not capture. Geomorphology, coastlines, mountain ranges, river networks, and lightning bolts all display fractal scaling. The measured length of a coastline increases without bound as the measurement scale decreases, a direct consequence of its self-similar roughness. Biology, the branching structures of trees, roots, ferns, and blood vessels, arterial and bronchial trees, are fractal, maximizing surface area for resource exchange within finite volumes. Neural networks also exhibit fractal complexity. Cosmology. The distribution of matter in the universe, from galaxies to galaxy clusters, is not random, but follows a fractal-like pattern of clusters within clusters. Dynamic systems and chaos theory. Fractals are intimately linked to chaotic systems, deterministic systems highly sensitive to initial conditions. The attractors that govern the long-term behavior of such systems, e.g., the Lorentz attractor for weather, are often fractal in shape. This reveals an underlying order within apparent chaos, a deep pattern-gidding complex, dynamic processes from fluid turbulence to population biology. Implications for the correspondence principle. Fractal geometry provides a rigorous mathematical language for the Hermetic intuition. It demonstrates that nature builds not with random complexity, but with iterated, simple rules that generate complex, self-reflective patterns. The whole is encoded in its parts. The pattern of a single leaf vein contains the algorithmic blueprint for the entire tree. This scientific model validates the metaphysical claim of a holographic, patterned universe where scale is a perspective, not a fundamental separation.